The Secret of Kells. Back during my very beginnings, around the end of 2009 and the beginning of 2010, I made a small video about not only my opinions on the animated films of 2009, but also that Up was the second animated film to ever be nominated for Best Picture. I was excited at the time, and it was a very proud moment for animation. Anyways, on that video, I mentioned that I would review two more animated films at the time, Fantastic Mr. Fox and The Secret of Kells. I did the Mr. Fox review, but the idea of the Kells review just got lost. Luckily, about 3.5 years later, there it was out of my animation hat to fulfill that promise I made long ago. So was this film worth the wait for me to make a review? Or was there a reason why I didn't even look at it in the first place? Let's find out. The story. This is one of those rare moments where the story feels more like an experience. It follows a boy named Brendan, where he has to help Aiden to complete what would become the Book of Kells. This may seem like the kind of film that would utilize some cliches like the destined little boy and that he goes to the forbidden zone where his guardian says not to go to, and honestly, they're easy to spot in this. But the way they told it is just beautiful. The journey in which Brendan goes through for the book is really engaging, especially with the magical forest and the village of Kells. Speaking of which, the movie gives its environment a very rich history in terms of the origin of the land, the legends they tell to each other, and the mystical power it holds. Another thing that makes the story very unique is that it doesn't have a lot of humor. In Hollywood-esque animated films, they try to make it a part comedy to make it more lighthearted for the younger audience. In The Secret of Kells, though, they utilize the fantasy elements and the feeling of wonder to get its positive tone. That, and they're not afraid to get really dark than most animated films, and the best part is that with this kind of film, it really works to its advantage. The one small flaw I would have though is that the ending does feel a bit rushed. I won't say anything, but let's say it feels like they skipped some important parts that they should have gone more in depth. But I will admit it is a bit nitpicking since the end is still satisfying. It's really not common these days to find a story that can be as interesting to watch as it is creative. The animation. What they did here is that they took the art of 2D animation to a whole new level. They followed the footsteps of films like Sleeping Beauty and The Last Unicorn, and they gave it a more medieval design where it looks like it came out of a painting during those days. However, unlike the previous movies mentioned, they really put emphasis on the medieval style, not just on their backgrounds, but also on the designs of the characters and the overall look of the film. There are a lot of times when it feels like they took out the depth, making it look completely flat, and often gives out very interesting transitions to where our characters would travel. Plus the fact that places like the forest really does feel magical when the fantasy elements kick in. As for the characters, they have a more simple design that puts emphasis on their shapes, like how Brendan has a circle thing going while some of the Illuminators have this arc around them. Also, their animation feels like the TV works of Jenny Tartakovsky, since it feels very fluent and smooth if he decided to be more stylized than cartoony, like what he did in Star Wars Clone Wars. Another interesting thing with what they did to the animation is that there are times when they use different techniques of animations to show the scenes. Like they go more flash animation when the Illuminators talk about the legends, while some computer animation was used to show the presence of evil, like on The Crows. It makes it sad that almost everybody in the industry is doing computer animation, because this is one of the greatest examples of what 2D animation is capable of doing. The characters. There aren't a lot of characters to talk about, but I must say that it's amazing to watch an entire cast that can not only have so much backstory to them, but also a lot of development happening during the course of the movie. Our main character, Brendan, is a more curious boy that's interested in the life of an illuminator because their job is to pass on their knowledge to the future through scrolls and books. As he's brought in by Aiden to be his assistant, he's determined to finish his book even if there are a lot of obstacles in his way. But then there's Abbott, Brendan's uncle, who wouldn't let him go beyond the walls he's building since the outside world is far too dangerous. He is pretty close-minded, thinking that all the world's problems will be solved by his wall, and is more hard-pressed on people doing their job than lollygagging around. But he is doing it for the concern of everyone's safety. But then there are the Illuminators. They do help out with the exposition at the beginning of the movie, but other than that, they don't really do much and they serve a bit more as comedy reliefs. There's Aiden, who is considered the master illuminator making the Book of Kells, who seems more fun to be with than Abbott. However, he came into Kells to flee from the Vikings that destroyed his village, which pose as a major threat in the movie. Finally, there's Ashley, a fairy who's like the guardian of the forest near Kells. At first, she didn't want any guests in her forest, but then she becomes friends with Brendan since they both don't have a family to take care of them. It's nice to see a movie that gives us very little amount of characters with a lot of development, rather than a lot of characters with very little development. The Secret of Kells is not just an example of how traditional animation can be a wonderful art form, but also a great representation of the entire medium. With its beautifully stylized animation, creative story writing, and fully fleshed out characters, it makes total sense how it got that Oscar nomination. This is a must-watch for any fan of both animation and fantasy alike, especially to those who love Don Bluth's The Secret of Nim. You know, I'm really glad that I discovered this film being the animation aficionado that I am, because this has the kind of creativity that earns the AniMat's seal of approval. Hey guys, this is AniMat. I hope you guys really enjoyed this review of The Secret of Kells. I mean, I know I did. And if I could be honest, this is pretty much the reason why I made the AniMat Classic Reviews, is to pretty much discover these amazing films such as this, you know? But let's hope I can get another one in the animation hat for the next review. And by the way, if you guys have a suggestion for an animated film that I would put in the hat, just write me down an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. So, let's not waste any time. I'd rather hold it this way. Let's see now. Here we go. That was quick, actually. So, the next one will be... Oh my god. Ay, ay, ay. Oh, what was once a classical Broadway show or a play or whatever turned into an animated film and didn't turn out well. Yeah, this one won't be as good as The Secret of Kells.